It happened in the school parking lot. I was leaning against my car, scanning emails I didn't want to answer, when I heard her voice. That's her, the one who lost her job and her husband. It was loud enough to carry, but just quiet enough to pretend it wasn't meant for me. Claire Kendrick didn't look away when I turned. Her lips tightened in that artificial smile that always came with just a hint of pity, or maybe pleasure. I stood still, pretended I didn't hear, kept my eyes on the sidewalk like I was focused on something important. But my daughter, Lila, heard it. She was buckling herself into the back seat. I caught the flicker in her face, the confusion, the hurt. She looked up at me but didn't say anything, just sat there, backpack on her lap, fingers curled around the straps. I slid into the driver's seat, gripped the steering wheel, and smiled at her in the rearview mirror like nothing happened. My stomach was in knots. I felt the sting behind my eyes, the kind that comes fast and hot but doesn't spill. Claire and her friends laughed at something else a second later, already moving on. I stayed parked for a minute longer than I needed to, trying to breathe evenly. "Everything okay?" Lila asked. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's fine." It wasn't. I hadn't had a full-time job in 6 months. I was getting by on freelance work, but the money was tight. I was back living with my mom at 36, trying to act like it was temporary, and Aaron, my ex-husband, hadn't called in weeks. After he left, the silence was louder than any fight we ever had, but none of that was Lila's fault. None of it should have been hers to carry. I pulled out of the school parking lot and turned onto Maple Drive. The radio was low, playing something soft. The sun filtered through the trees, golden and careless. Lila stared out the window. I could tell her mind was spinning. "Mom," she asked. "Yeah? Did you really lose your job and your husband?" My throat tightened. I gripped the wheel harder. "I lost a job. I didn't lose everything." She nodded slowly. That was it. She didn't ask anything else. But the way she sat told me that something had shifted. That moment had landed somewhere deep inside her. I dropped her off at ballet practice and sat in the car afterward, watching other moms chat by the doors. Claire was there too, laughing, hair perfect, cup of cold brew in hand. I thought about walking over, saying something, defending myself. But I didn't. I just sat there, replaying it all, wondering how one sentence from someone else could make me feel so small. I didn't know then what Lila was doing at school the next day. I didn't know about the story she had written or what she was about to say in front of her entire class. All I knew was that my 8-year-old daughter had seen me. She had heard what they said. And somewhere inside her, something had clicked. Something brave. Something I didn't expect. Something that would stop everyone, including Claire Kendrick, in their tracks. Most mornings started the same. I would wake up before Lila, tiptoe around my mother's kitchen, and try not to burn the toast. Our lives didn't look like they used to, not even close. We were in the house I grew up in, sleeping in rooms that weren't meant to hold our current lives. My childhood bedroom had become my office, my sanctuary, my panic room, all of it. The coffee pot sputtered and hissed. My mom had already left for her part-time shift at the library. She offered to help more than once, but I kept saying no. I wasn't ready to admit how close we were skating to the edge. I packed Lila's lunch like I used to before everything fell apart. Peanut butter and banana sandwich, juice box, her favorite little orange crackers. One of the only constants in her life. She came down the stairs in her school uniform with sleepy eyes and her backpack dragging behind her. She rubbed her eyes and smiled at me. "Do I have ballet today?" "Yep, after school." "Can you watch this time?" I nodded. "Of course I can." She smiled wider and poured cereal into a bowl with both hands. It spilled across the counter. I started to clean it up, but she beat me to it. We didn't talk about her dad much anymore. He used to do breakfast. He'd stack pancakes into messy towers and pretend they were skyscrapers. That was when things felt solid. Before he started staying late at work and coming home distant. Before I found the message on his phone. Before he told me he felt trapped and needed space. Then he moved in with someone else. Then I lost my job. Lila never cried when I told her. She just asked if we could still have Friday movie nights. I told her yes. That part of us wouldn't change, but it did. I applied for jobs constantly. Marketing positions, admin work, customer service roles I hadn't done since college. No one called back. The longer the silence stretched, the heavier it felt. I told myself I was taking a break, that I was being selective. but I was scared. I didn't know what I wanted anymore, or if I was even worth hiring. The school pickup line had become a daily ritual I both dreaded and depended on. It was a reminder that I still had somewhere to be, someone counting on me, but it was also where I saw all the pieces of the life I used to have, reflected in other people's smiles, the conversations I wasn't part of, the invitations I didn't receive. Claire Kendrick was always at the center. Her husband owned a local real estate firm. Her kids wore monogrammed sweaters and brought homemade snacks to school functions. She led the PTA and treated it like a Fortune 500 boardroom. She never said anything outright cruel, just enough to remind you where you stood. I didn't hate her. I envied her. And I hated that I envied her. The school had become a stage I couldn't exit. Every event, every hallway, every birthday invitation Lila received was a reminder that I didn't fit in anymore. I wasn't the together mom. I was the mom who showed up late, who couldn't host play dates, who smiled too tightly and left quickly. But through all of it, Lila stayed steady. She still believed in magic. She still believed I could fix anything. That faith both saved me and broke me. I didn't want her to know how fragile I had become. I didn't want her to carry the weight of my failure. That's why I didn't react when Claire said what she said in the parking lot. I thought staying quiet would protect Lila, that ignoring it would keep her from feeling ashamed. I was wrong. She saw more than I realized. She understood more than I wanted to admit. And while I was trying to keep her from hearing the worst parts of my story, she was already writing her own version of it, one I hadn't seen coming. That night, after the parking lot incident, I sat across from Lila at the dinner table, watching her draw shapes in her mashed potatoes with her fork. She wasn't talking much. Normally, she told me everything. What her friend Harper said at recess, what the lunch lady wore, how many times someone burped during music class. But tonight, she was quiet. I forced a smile and asked, "You okay, sweet pea?" She looked up and nodded. "You sure?" She hesitated for half a second, then nodded again. I didn't push. I was afraid of what she might say, that she had heard every word, that she was embarrassed, that she was disappointed in me. I couldn't take hearing that from her. Not now. After dinner, she went upstairs and disappeared into her room. I cleaned up, loaded the dishwasher, folded some laundry, and waited for her usual call for help with brushing her hair. But it didn't come. When I peeked into her room, she was sitting at her desk, head down, writing something by hand in a folder with rainbow stickers across the front. She didn't look up when I knocked. "Homework?" I asked gently. "Sort of," she said. "Need help?" She shook her head. "It's for Hero Week." "Oh, right. Is that this week?" "Tomorrow," she said. "I'm reading something." I nodded, even though she wasn't looking at me. "Okay, let me know if you want to practice." She didn't answer, just kept writing. I walked back to my room and told myself it was probably a story about a firefighter or an astronaut. That's what most kids chose. The next morning, Lila seemed lighter. She wore her unicorn shirt and added glitter to her sneakers. As I buckled her into the car, she turned to me and asked, "What's your favorite flower?" I paused. "I guess sunflowers." She smiled, like she already knew that. "Mine too." At drop-off, I watched her skip toward the front doors, hugging the folder to her chest like it held treasure. For a second, I felt hope. A soft flicker. I didn't know where it came from. That afternoon, I got the call. "Mrs. Dallin, this is Principal Halloran. Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to invite you to stop by the library if you're free this afternoon. Leela shared something during Hero Week, and I think you'd want to hear it, if you're comfortable." I was caught off guard. "She shared something?" "She did," he said. "It was honest, brave. I'd really like you to hear it." I stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding in my chest. "Okay," I said, "I'll be there." The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to work but couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that folder, her quiet night at the desk, the question about my favorite flower. What had she written? What had she said? By the time I pulled up to the school, my palms were sweating. I walked into the library and was met with an unfamiliar silence. 2 teachers sat by the window. Claire was there too, flipping through her phone without looking up. Lila was nowhere in sight. Principal Halloran greeted me with a kind smile. "I'm glad you could make it." "I'm not sure what this is," I admitted. He nodded. "Lila shared a personal story today. It moved the room. The students asked if I could read it again during the afternoon break. We wanted you to hear it too. With your permission, of course. I nodded slowly. What's it about? He held up the folder I had seen her clutch that morning. The words on the cover were written in bold purple marker. My mom is a phoenix. That was the moment something shifted in me. For weeks I had been trying to keep it all in, trying to stay calm and composed for Lila, trying not to let the stares, the whispers, or the silence get to me. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't invisible. Not to her, not to the people who mattered. Whatever she had written, it was more than a school assignment. It was her truth. And mine. Whether I was ready or not. I sat in the back of the library, hands folded in my lap, as Principal Halloran opened the folder. The hum of the air conditioning and the distant chatter of students made the room feel too quiet. I looked around. Claire was still scrolling on her phone. A few teachers sat up straighter. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I wanted to run, but I stayed. Lila wasn't in the room. That was intentional, Principal Halloran had said. She had already read the story out loud to her class earlier that morning. This time, it was for the adults. He cleared his throat, then began to read. My Mom is a Phoenix, he said, by Lila Dallin. And just like that, the room fell silent. My mom lost her job, then she lost her husband, then she lost our house. But she never lost me. My throat tightened. I stared at my hands, but I could hear every breath in the room shift. She still made pancakes on Fridays. She still braided my hair. She still came to every recital. Even when she was tired, she always smiled at me in the morning. And when I had bad dreams, she stayed until I fell back asleep. She didn't act sad, even though I knew she was. I gripped the sides of my chair. Some people think my mom is weak. They whisper about her when they think I can't hear. But I do hear. I hear everything. And I see everything. The words landed hard. I wasn't sure I could keep sitting still, but I didn't move. She lost so many things, but she never gave up. She kept trying. That's why I think my mom is a phoenix, because a phoenix burns, but then it rises again. It's not the fire that destroys it. It's the fire that changes it. My mom is stronger now, not because everything is fixed, but because she keeps going. Principal Halloran paused at that line. He looked up briefly, then kept reading. She reads to me at night. She helps with math homework, even when it makes her frown. She tells me stories from when she was a kid, and she always says I'm her best thing. I think she's my best thing, too. I felt tears fall before I realized they had started. I wiped them quickly, quietly. I didn't want anyone to see me cry, but I also didn't care. She doesn't know it, but I wrote this story because I heard what that lady said at school. I heard her say my mom was the one who lost everything. But she was wrong. My mom didn't lose everything. She just lost things that didn't deserve her. Someone across the room gasped. Claire had stopped pretending not to listen. The final line came next. It was written in bold, underlined letters. I hope I grow up to be just like her. When Principal Halloran closed the folder, the room stayed silent for a moment longer. Then one of the teachers clapped. Another followed. A few of them were wiping their eyes. Claire stood frozen, blinking fast, her arms crossed like armor. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Every part of me was shaking, not from shame, but from something else. Something I hadn't felt in months, maybe longer. Pride. Not the loud, showy kind, the quiet kind that grows in the background and waits for its moment. The kind that catches you off guard when it shows up, wrapped in your daughter's voice. I left the library with the folder clutched against my chest. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt different. Not better, not suddenly whole, but different. That night, after Lila brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, I lay next to her for a while. "Did they read my story again?" she asked. "They did," I said. "I was there." She turned her head toward me. Was it okay? It was the bravest thing I've ever seen. She smiled and closed her eyes. I watched her breathe, steady and safe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we were going to be okay. Not because everything was fixed, but because we were still here, still trying, still rising. The next morning, I woke up before Lila and sat at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of me. Her handwriting covered every inch of the page, colorful and determined. She had drawn a phoenix in the corner, wings spread, rising from red and gold flames. It wasn't perfect. One wing was bigger than the other, and the beak looked like a duck's. But it was beautiful. It was everything. I didn't drink my coffee. I just sat there staring at that drawing. That was how my daughter saw me. Not as broken, not as the woman other people whispered about, but as someone who kept rising no matter what. When I dropped Lila off that morning, something had shifted in the way people looked at us. 2 teachers gave me warm, real smiles. A dad I'd never spoken to before held the door open for us. Claire stood across the parking lot, holding her coffee tighter than usual. She saw me. I saw her. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. I didn't need to. Later that day, I got an email from Principal Halloran. He asked for permission to print Lila's story in the school's weekly newsletter. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't want it shared, but because I knew once it was out there, everything would be different, not just for me, but for Lila, for how people talked about us, for how I talked about myself. I said yes. By Friday, everyone had read it. At ballet practice, one of the moms I barely knew came up to me and said, "I read your daughter's story. It was incredible. You're doing a great job." I didn't know how to respond at first. I smiled. I said thank you. But inside, something cracked open and released the air I'd been holding for months. That night, Lila and I brought back Friday movie night. We sat on the couch with popcorn and a blanket. She picked the movie, some animated adventure with singing animals. I didn't care. I watched her instead. After the movie, she looked at me and said, "Did I embarrass you?" "No," I said. "You did the opposite." "What's the opposite of embarrassing?" "You made me proud." She leaned her head on my arm and nodded like she already knew. That weekend, I updated my resume. For real this time. I didn't stare at the blank document until I got overwhelmed and gave up. I filled in every job, every project, every freelance gig I'd taken just to keep us afloat. I listed all of it, even the small things, because they weren't small anymore. I applied for 3 positions, not out of panic, out of belief. Not just because I needed work, but because I was ready to stand up straight again. On Monday morning, an email came in, an interview. The company had read one of my blog articles and wanted to talk. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. Lila saw the smile on my face and asked what happened. I told her. She gave me a high five, then grabbed a granola bar like it was just another Monday. But I knew better. It wasn't. After school that day, she came out of the building with a piece of paper in her hand. She waved it in the air before she even reached the car. "I got picked for Student of the Month." I laughed. A real one. The kind that comes from your stomach. We celebrated that night with dollar store cupcakes and paper crowns. I let her stay up late. We danced in the living room. My mom watched from the kitchen and shook her head, smiling. Something had changed in our house. It wasn't just quieter. It wasn't just cleaner. It felt stronger. Like the floor beneath us wasn't about to crack. Like we weren't pretending anymore. The story Lila wrote didn't just stop people from talking. It reminded me who I was. Not the woman who lost everything. The one who got back up. Sometimes life falls apart loudly. Other times it unravels in small, quiet moments. An empty email inbox, a door that closes without a goodbye, a whispered sentence in a parking lot. But healing doesn't announce itself either. It shows up in small victories. A warm breakfast shared with your daughter. A job interview after weeks of silence. A story written in purple marker that pulls you back to the surface. I used to think strength meant pretending nothing was wrong. Smiling through it, pushing forward without complaint, keeping up the illusion that I was fine. I didn't want Lila to see me struggle. I thought if I hid my pain, I could protect her from it. But it turns out she didn't need me to be perfect. She needed me to be honest, and she needed to be seen too. That story she wrote, it didn't just change how people looked at me, it changed how I looked at myself. I had been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't stopped to see what I had kept. My daughter, my courage, my capacity to keep moving forward, even on the hardest days. The judgment from other parents no longer hit the same way. I stopped worrying about whether they liked me or pitied me. Their approval wasn't the measure anymore. Lila's voice was. The job interview went well. I didn't overthink it. I spoke clearly, confidently, and owned my experience. They didn't ask about the gap in my employment, but if they had, I was ready. I had done more in those months than most resumes would ever show. 2 weeks later, they offered me a position, remote, flexible, and exactly the kind of work I had almost convinced myself I wasn't good enough for. When I told Lila, she screamed and hugged me so tightly I nearly dropped my phone. "I knew you could do it," she said. I laughed. "I think you were the only one who did." "Nope," she said. "You just forgot for a little while." That night, we wrote out a new routine on our chalkboard wall. Mornings, work time, school pickup, movie nights, and Sunday pancakes. It wasn't just a schedule. It was a promise to ourselves. Claire never said anything to me after that day in the library. She still looked the same, still held her coffee the same way, still stood with the same group of moms by the double doors. But now, I didn't feel small when I passed her. I didn't need her to look at me. I had already been seen. Every time Lila walks into school with her backpack bouncing and her eyes lit up, I remember what matters. Not the opinions of people who never cared to ask, but the trust of the one person who watched me fall and still believed I would rise. This isn't the story I would have chosen. I wouldn't have asked for the job loss or the broken marriage or the quiet panic that came with starting over. But if all of that led to this moment, sitting at my kitchen table watching my daughter scribble homework next to me while my inbox fills with real opportunities, then I can live with it. And more than that, I can be proud of it. Because when the world whispered shame into my life, my daughter answered with truth. When people looked away, she stood up. And when I doubted myself, she reminded me that rising isn't about doing it all perfectly. It's about refusing to stay buried. My name is Mira Dallin. I'm a mother, a writer, and yes, I lost things, but I also gained something far more powerful. I gained a story, and a daughter who was brave enough to tell it. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone else's, take a second and like the video. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Maybe they're in the middle of a hard chapter. Maybe they're just waiting to rise. Leave a comment below and tell me, who's your phoenix? Or when was the last time you got back up? And if you believe in real stories that show the beauty in struggle, in hope and quiet courage, subscribe to the channel. There's more to come. Thank you for being here, for listening, for staying until the end. I'm Mira, and this was my story.